In 1873, a group of builders in Sydney founded the Builders and Contractors Association of New South Wales. In the August of the following year, Newcastle builders banded together and sent a letter to them asking their permission to establish a Newcastle branch. Only 1 month later, the New South Wales Association gave a branch at Newcastle the power and authority to enrol all builders and contractors as members. This association continued until 1902, when the builders in Newcastle wrote to their parent association advising them that they wanted to break away. This request was granted, and Newcastle, New South Wales Master Builders has been an autonomous body ever since, becoming a member of the Master Builders Federation of Australia in 1909. In 1927, Newcastle accountant Sam Scorer was appointed on a part-time basis as secretary, a position he fulfilled for 40 years until 1967, when the association's first full-time executive director was appointed. The association's first headquarters, called the Builders Exchange, was built at the fashionable end of King Street, just around the corner from the Great Northern Hotel in 1928. 1947 saw the election of the first Newcastle builder as the National President of Master Builders Federation. He was Charles Davis, who was made the second only life member of National Federation in 1967. The 60s also saw the creation of the Newcastle Association's first building material display centre for the public, a European idea that had impressed members who had seen them overseas. In September 1967, the second headquarters building of the Newcastle NMBA was constructed at Watt Street and was opened by the Prime Minister, Mr. Harold Holt. As the pace of industry started to get faster, Newcastle's first exhibition village was constructed by the NMBA in Queen Street, New Lambton in 1969. The NMBA membership services quickly outgrew the Watt Street headquarters. In 1978, the association bought the land at Broadmeadow. Australia's most devastating earthquake late in 1989 saw the NMBA become an integral part of the emergency recovery and reconstruction of Newcastle, a role recognised by an award from the New South Wales Government. The devastating fire of 2003 and the complete loss of offices at Broadmeadow didn't stop the business-as-usual attitude as operations and services to members continued. From humble beginnings, the NMBA has grown of age with the help of Newcastle, its builders, subcontractors, suppliers and construction professionals, and is a strong, active and autonomous voice of the building industry of the Hunter.
As I remember, I was invited to join. In those days, you didn't just go up and join the Master Builders, you were invited to join. That's how I became involved. And I sort of enjoyed every minute of it since. I think I've held every position in the Master Builders in over 30 years that I spent on the committees and so forth. When I first joined, the Master Builders was in Scott Street, Scott Street. They had a building there. It was about a 3 or 4 story building. I always remember it because it didn't have a lift. It was just stairs to walk up to and the Master Builders' rooms on the top floor. And they had to carry all the cartons of beer up there. It was very funny, really. Used to remember it from the fact that Charles Davis, who's a past president, also a past federal president, was a bit of a character. And Arthur Tiernan, a builder, a small builder. Charlie was a big builder, sort of. And they used to fight like cat and dog. I used to sit on the side and watch. It amazed me just what went on, you know, like. And the other thing, most of the people there were big builders, you know, I was only a small bloke just coming through, so at that time. This was about 1947. And I always remember, you know, amazed was Orrit, and he was one of the biggest builders in the town. I think he built the Mater Hospital, and Frank Compton, and all the very big blokes, you know. I was amazed. I used to look at goggle-eyed sort of business, you know, that I was in the same room as these blokes. I was a little builder, you know. Like, but it was good. It was education, and they speak to you, they talk to you, they're friendly.
Well, 1923, my dad joined the Newcastle NMBA. I was into a building family, I think. My grandfather was Ben Pearce. He was the first secretary in 1903. He was president in 1905. So our building connection goes back, way back.
My grandfather, Frank Compton, established F.H. Compton and Sons in 1921. He started out, I understand, in residential building, and then quickly established himself in the commercial sector of the industry. Frank was president in 1955, 1956, so he would have been on the board prior to that. Frank would have, in those days, and I've got photos and seen photos of him attending the national board meetings, along with a lot of the old generation of presidents that were around his time that were also on the national board, and he no doubt would have represented Newcastle Master Builders at national level. Brian was the same. He was president in 1964, 1966, and he was a major player in organising to set up the first building display centre in Newcastle at the Master Builders. So he worked tirelessly on that. In 1996-97 I was the president, and once again, just like Brian and Frank, it was an honour to be following both my father and my grandfather, and I believe that we are the first and only third generation of builders that have held the honour of being president of Master Builders Newcastle.
Well, it started in 1911, and it started in 44 Margaret Street, Tyers Hill, in the back shed. And my grandfather was one of 10 brothers who were plasterers, and they started off out at Cardiff, and Crockett Street at Cardiff has been named after the family out there, and Cahiba and Tyers Hill. So there were 3 different families of Crockett's, all brothers, fighting against one another in the 20s and 30s and things like that. In the Depression, he only got a job every couple of months, so they'd close down and start up, close down and start up, and moved up to Foster growing tomatoes. After the war, then my father and his brothers came back from the war. They blossomed back up at Tyers Hill, opened all the factory, and then started moving again full time. In 1951, my grandfather died, and the 2 brothers, Arthur, that's my father, and Jack, they took it all over and moved from there. And it went from there, from commercial plasterers to all different suspended ceilings, made all their own grids, everything like that. So it was pretty far-sighted thinking the way they were going. So we become by far the biggest in Newcastle, and we then branched out to Beresfield, as we were talking about before, and opened another company called Newcastle Interior Linings. And then we opened Simplex Ceilings, which became international, and it moved up to Tomigo, had a fairly big factory at Tomigo, and supplied China and places like that. Then we started NHS, NIL, NHS. We had probably 5 companies. So.
The late Sam Scorer, Frederick Samuel Selby Scorer, chartered accountant. he had employed me on the 4th of January 1943. And he and myself were always inclined towards people who were team-minded.
Mr. Scorer was stock and share broker.
Yes.
And Dan was the...
He was a chartered accountant when I first joined him.
And
as
Dan
I said,
was a chartered accountant.
4th of January 1943. And among his various clients was the Newcastle Master Builders Association.
Yes.
He was the secretary. One of my tasks in my early days was to go around to where we were in the T&G building, and the Builders Exchange was at 27 King Street.
Mm-hmm.
And when there was the committee meeting, was my job to go around, go up to the 3rd floor and set out the agenda papers and the business for the evening.
They said that as soon as they knew that we'd come out as Davies and Lewis, that we should join the Master Builders, because that's what we should do. We joined the Master Builders, and then I didn't push myself up. I was invited by Penfold, Black, Compton, and these Stronachs. They felt that I was the bloke to move in and fill the gap. I had a good technical mind, and as I was invited onto even the Builders Licensing Board, when that first came on, I had input into that. So I think that's what the association needed, was someone that could look at a contract and say, well, this is right or this isn't right. And we were in the old buildings in King Street, and that's when Brian Compton started talking about us getting our new president. So I was there at that time, and then Brian did a brilliant job to do what he did and how he did, and then along came the idea that we should then support it with a building centre. So I was included in looking at various building centres around Newcastle, around Sydney and other states, and then we started with that, and then got Norm Steep to come along, and then by the middle of finishing my term, the building was being finished and the building centre was opening, and so I went in then as the past presidents always had 2 years serving as the chairman of the building centre. And so the building centre was a whole thing and was very good for the people.
Yeah, well, my father was a little bit hesitant about joining the Master Builders, and I sort of talked him into it to a degree, and that's when they used to be in King Street before we built the building in Watt Street. And I used to go to the meetings with my father and hear what was going on. And I found it rather interesting, and Dad wasn't interested in going to the meetings, so I used to go, not to all of them, but quite a few of them when Sammy Scorer was there. And yeah, so that's how I got involved. Well, I was on the committee for, I'm not sure when now, but 20 or 30 years, I believe. Yeah, I worked with the other presidents and so on, and well, we were just a very happy group of fellows, all of a similar age, and enjoyed, except for a couple of the older ones. But we had a good time together as the meetings and so on, and very proud to be Newcastle.
My father before me was a builder, and he was a member of the NMBA. Before it was called NMBA, I don't remember what it used to be. Yes, my first memory was when I was allowed to sit at a second seat in the, I wasn't up enough in the building industry, I was in the second seats behind the people in front. And I'm pretty sure that Sessoret was then the president, but I could be wrong on that. I had a good, I think it was 2 years in presidency. I did enjoy the time. The first place I came into the NMBA was in King Street, where we used to meet. And then there was a bit of a hustle to say, let's build a decent place ourselves. So that all took place, which went well. And of course they outgrew that. as the years went on. And whereas you see what we've got here for the younger generations, goodness knows where it'll go from there. But I think it'll go from strength to strength.
I was started as a board member, then a treasurer, treasurer. Well, it started in the King Street residence. Then we moved around the corner into the Watt Street premises. Then I think I was president when the building before this was opened.
I wanted to be a master builder, and I sort of progressed in the cottage work through to a level which I was pretty good at. And then I turned around and I approached the association. I joined in 1964, and so I've got 50 years of membership coming up next year in 2014. From 1964 I came actively involved in the association, and I sort of sat on committees for probably about 5 years, going through the various situations which were available in the committee. And then I took on the presidency in 1988, about September 1988. So that's where I became involved with the association.
I joined the Master Builders in 1958, and because I was at Toronto, and of course that was in Newcastle. Actually, the ED at the time had to come out and bring the certificate. I'm not quite sure what was his name, Ellingworth or a name like that, so many years ago. But he brought my certificate out to my place. I was building a new home for myself at the time when he came in, and he had a look around. He said, "Oh, good. Well, why don't you come to our meetings?" "Oh, look," I said, "I'm too busy with what I've got at the moment." I joined the Master Builders Bowls in 1970, and we went all around. And Norm kept Ron Black kept pestering me to come into the meetings. And I said, "Ron, I'm too busy. I just can't. I couldn't move." So later on, I did go to the meetings when Ron was very sick, and he was the president of the Master Builders Bowls. So that's how I linked up the bowls with the Master Builders, and then I went to the meetings. And that's when I started in at the meetings. And then Norm Steep come and asked me, "Stan, would you like to be the deputy?" "Oh, Norm," I don't think I've been here long enough. "No," he said, you've been here long enough to know about the Master Builders." So anyhow, he put my name forward and it was carried. And I carried through till on the Christmas 1989, the earthquake. And Norm rang me up and he says, "Dan, can you come in?" I said, "What's the matter?" He said, "We've got the earthquake and everybody's ringing up for quotes." So I immediately went in, and then we spent a lot of time there with the earthquake. And as it turned out, everybody's ringing the council, and they were ringing the government, they were ringing the insurance companies, and they had to get quotes. So the government said, the New South Wales government said, "Well, it's better if the Master Builders handles all the inquiries coming in." So we handled all that, and it was a massive job.
Yeah, well, I've had a long involvement with the NMBA. I can recall going to my first series of meetings of the NMBA in King Street, Newcastle. And then I drifted off, sort of lost interest in it for a while. My brother was involved in it at that stage. And then they opened up the new premises in Watt Street, Newcastle. And after the opening, I became involved. and I think Don McCloy was the president at the time. And I became involved on a regular basis at that point in time. And Norm Steep was the executive, he was the executive director. And then I held no position at that point in time until we came out here to Broadmeadow, where I became the national president, I became the NMBA president here of Newcastle in 1982 and 83. Prior to that, I was the treasurer for some time.
I was involved with the building centre there, sat on that committee for a while. As I said, housing chairman. I became treasurer there for a while, and I guess after a period of time, they thought that, you know, we'll give this guy a go for presidency, so I got nominated and I accepted, and I think I was goes down on record, I was the first residential housing builder ever to be a Master Builders President at the time. I was involved, unfortunately, in the Royal Commission into the building industry. When I came into my presidency, there was a government investigation into the unsuccessful tenders fees in the building industry. That's caused the industry or the association lots of grief. I probably had about 10 years, I suppose, involvement officially with the Master Builders Association. I've been a member probably for 15 or 20 years. At the time I was president, it was pretty hard for me because my wife was diagnosed with terminal cancer, so I went through a bit of a hard road there for a couple of years, dealing with that and the place at the same time. But I soon realised that it's a pretty great group of people here, and you might be the president or the voice, but you're only one vote. You sit down and everybody makes the decisions, or you come up with the right answer. Not just you do it yourself, basically. But
I joined in 1971. I was asked by a local builder that I knew, and he just asked me to come along to a Master Builders meeting one day. And I'd not long started my business. I started in '68, and at that stage, at that time in Master Builders time, there were mainly commercial builders. So I thought, it might be a little bit out of place. But when I joined, I made some nice friends, and the best thing was that I had Master Builder written on my first new truck, and actually at that time Master Builder was, you're a good builder if you're a Master Builder. So I was just on the board of directors. I was treasurer for a number of years. Then I chaired the housing, the building centre for a couple of years, and then I was judging on the Master Builders Excellence in Building Awards for a number of years. Then I was vice president, and then I became president. Must have been my turn.
Well, I think we were more or less born into it. Didn't think of anything else when we left school. So we're lucky we didn't have to even think about looking for a job, because it was there. And I suppose that's all I really thought about building, and enjoyed it all the way through. There'd be nothing worse than going to a job you don't enjoy and coming home and say, shit, why did I go there? What am I doing this for? My dad was, because he started the company, his first big job was the Civic Theatre in town, and he just progressed from there. And he never wanted to retire. My brother and I, Spencer and I, sort of came involved when Dad was sort of slowing down a bit. But he never slowed down, really. He was in the office till 2 weeks before he died, at age 72. and Spencer, we were very, very close. We were only 6 years between us, and I was younger by 6 years, but we worked together for over 50 years with not one crossword, not one. And that was pretty good, I thought. I mean, there's that many buildings that drive around town that got our name tag on them. Probably Newcastle Police Station. It goes, you know, the way the time flies, that was over 20 years ago. Car parks, Dalton Street car park, King Street car park, just on and on.
Yeah.
University, the medical science building at the university, it's a 7-storey building. All the engineering buildings at the university.
Frank established the company, and Brian came in, and Brian was very, very proactive in ensuring that the company moved on, and he, in particular, drove the company forward into what were some major contracts in the Hunter and Newcastle region. I became involved in the company probably in about the 1970s, and during that time I spent time in the joinery shop, and then I did the building certificate and moved on from there, and became involved with the company and as project management and through to estimating, and on a similar path to what was then the way in the industry. My grandfather, who started the company in 1921, started the company with absolutely nothing, and I was fortunate enough after some 80 years to close it down, and we still have most of it left, so we didn't go too bad really, and it put me on a new direction where I was able to look after my family and not devote myself so much to what was becoming a very difficult, and still is, a red tape industry that just is something that you've got to be on top of and have the right people around you. So it's been an interesting term for 3 generations, but the 3rd generation, it's always the most difficult. But at the end of the day, the right decision was made, and I'm very comfortable with that. In 1993, Brian also was awarded the Order of Australia Medal for his services to the building industry, and I'm not sure of the date, but I think I'm right. I know that in the photo Mum had a beehive, so it's going back a bit. But he was very honoured for that, and a very private man, Dad. Didn't like to big note himself or anything like that, and he'd never mention it or even wear his medal, but at the end of the day he was honoured with that, and it's something that the family was very proud of.
I was doomed to be in the building trade because my grandfather and my 3 uncles were bricklayers. So in 1952, 53, I remember the high school wanting me to go on to do metallurgy and do other things because they felt I had the ability, but at home it was, you're going to be a carpenter. They at least didn't force me to swing a trowel. So I was put into that era where I had to be a carpenter, and virtually I've met a lot of wonderful people in the trade, and if I'd have been a metallurgist I'd have been probably put out of the BHP about 20 years ago. So that's the difference with it. And I worked for Jerry's father as an apprentice, and in 1957 I won the Apprenticeship of the Year. But previous to that, his father was bringing me up the ladder. Although I was only a 4th year apprentice, I was starting to take responsibility. Jerry was in his father's office estimating, and then his father said to us, I think about 1961, that he wanted to retire, and if we built him a yacht, he'd give us the business. And that was what we did. I went out the back and he sent me off to a naval architect. I learned how it was a 28-foot boat, complete from the keel up, and we used to work on it during the week and weekends. And at the end his father decided to retire. Newcastle Leagues Club, Adamstown, RSL. We got the maintenance contract at the electric lamps, and that was a very complicated one. They were bringing in machinery for making lamps, and we were sort of called in any time at the weekend to have to do some repairs and works.
Well, my father was in business as builders in the name of Davies and Fraser. I went to school and I went to Boys High and I passed, only just passed, and my father said, "Son, you're not interested in going to school?" I said no, so I became a carpenter. And so I worked for my father for a number of years, from 51 up to 1962 when Dad retired, and I took over the business and brought Darryl Lewis in as a partner, and that's how I started off in the building industry, which I don't have any regrets about. At one stage we got up to 80 employees. We used to own 5 backhoes, which you used to hire out. So we're a bit of everything. We used to build quite a lot of houses a year. We do a lot of commercial products. So we had a real mixture in our business, a bit of everything really, and we were pretty successful over the years. We went from 1962 up to 76. Then Darryl and I went our own way, and then I went out on my own then, and now I've got 2 sons who've taken over the business, and they're about to split up, and one's retiring and one's going out on his own again. So been a long time in the building industry.
Well, I left home not because of anything wrong, but a friend of my mother's wanted a house built out in the middle of New South Wales, Tottenham. I said, yes, I'll go. I went out there, I built the home. I loved the country life, stayed there for several years, and then met the girl of my wife, the girl of my life, the first wife, and we married. I brought her back to Newcastle. We had our children here. They're all grown up now. And of course, as you probably well know, I'm well retired by about 22 years now, and my son is following in the footsteps, but not directly. He's a building inspector, and that's what he does for a living. I had a very, very good association with the Bank of New South Wales, and they handed me contracts one after the other, and I built probably 90%, 95% of the banks in the Hunter Valley and further up the towards Queensland. You know what I mean?
Oh, well, I was always going to be a builder, and I served my time in. At that stage of the game, we had a joinery shop as well as a building business, and it was always Dad's idea that you served in the joinery shop for 12 months to get your idea of the use of tools. And in my earlier days, we were always, Dad said you shouldn't build houses for people because they build one, and that's their life type of thing. So we concentrated mainly on commercial work, which was schools. Schools mainly. It was when co-education started, and of course every school had to have an extension. So we were involved in a lot of schools. I don't know how many we've built, but when we were in our heyday, we'd probably do a couple of schools high schools in the 1 year.
I served a 5-year apprenticeship with a cottage builder in Mayfield by the name of Pierpoints, HW Pierpoint. Served 5 years on cottages, and then I spent a couple of years up in the country, up in Moree, working out on the sheep stations and that, and doing building work out there. And after that, I came back and I started working for myself at the age of 23. So I started on cottage work, and I always remember the first cottage I built was for a guy called Kevin McDougall, who was the president of the Western Suburbs Leagues Club. And he moved in on the day that we got married. So we got married, and and at the age of 23 I started working myself. When I started off, I just worked by myself, and I gradually increased my employees, and I worked from say 2, 3, 4, right through to about 15 employees at one stage. And we worked on cottage work for about the first 14 or 15 years of my building career. Then we branched out into commercial work. And I sort of did all types of commercial work right up till I retired in 1950, when I was 59 years of age.
Well, it went back right to our childhood, actually, when my father from Scotland and my mother from Scotland, and he never had a trade. And he wanted his 4 boys to have trades. I got an apprenticeship with a chap in Newcastle. We were living in Toronto, and I started with him for about 12 months. And then the local builder out there, which is a very good builder, J.W.T. Chapman, he took me on, and I served the rest of my time with him, the last 4 years. And at the end of my apprenticeship, on the Friday, I went up to his office on the Thursday, because I used to go home, get cleaned up and get dressed up properly. And I said, Mr. Chapman, I'll be leaving you tomorrow. That's my last day of my apprenticeship. Oh, no, son, no, son. He said, what are you going to do? I said, I'm starting contracting on Monday morning. Oh, he said, it's very hard out there, son. We had a bit of a recession in that time. And I said, I'll get by. So anyhow, he was such a good boss. He let me have his concrete mixers, truck, anything in his depot. I could bring all my supplies into his yard and cart it from there. On weekends, I could use all his facilities on a weekend. So I had a pretty kick start. Newcastle Post Office, we did all the interior of the exchange upstairs. We had to do that overnight time. I had to get the men going overnight time. We could only work overnight, and then the girls come in. A lot of other works all around.
Well, we had a diverse business, the Doran group of companies. We had a very diverse group, of which building was one. It all started with building back in 1917, I believe, by my father. We built our last job was the Manly Library building at Manly in 1994. So by the time I became national president, I was out of the building industry. But during my presidency at Newcastle, yes, we were very much involved in the industry. We did a lot of hospital work. We built the Gosford Hospital, and we did major additions to both the Gosford Hospital and the Wyong Hospital. That's right, I remember that. Oh, probably from the late 60s right up to the late 80s, right up till the 90s. Yeah, by and large, it was good. It was a good industry to be working in. There was a lot of union strife, but by and large, it was good. The NMBA was run very well under Norm, and things were prosperous.
Well, early days, I guess I started out pretty small and into renovations, and I gradually accrued into houses and better houses, and my reputation grew, and I had a good name, and demand grew. It was never an easy road. Building was always difficult, you know, and the industry had quite a few ups and downs over time, as it really does. It's like it's in a down now at the moment. You know, I had a company called Hutchinson Homes Private Limited and CHS Constructions. I used to do mainly residential, a little bit of commercial, but I was only in a medium way. I was never large. I just kept it so I could control it. I used to build 15 villas at a time. It was probably my largest project. A few smaller ones, but I think I've certainly done some nice buildings and quite a lot over time. But I think one of my biggest projects for a small villa was the 15 villas there at Mount Hutton there. I did. Well, I think the best way to view it is I enjoyed it, doing it. I left a lot of milestones around the town, so I can drive around and show my grandchildren or my new lady in my life. And, I was pleased that I actually walked that road, even though it had its ups and downs and difficulties. But no, it's all good. Best way to describe it, yeah.
We just came back from my 2-year contract in New Guinea. I was on a contract for a building company there, and mainly looking after a site supervisor on the admin college and a few other public buildings. And then we saved enough money to come back home, and at that stage I always wanted to start my own business anyway. So I started off doing mainly renovation work, and that happened in a good time when I lived in Western, and Alcan just started, and people were starting to get a bit of confidence in the area and started to renovate their houses, and that's when I started. It's always been satisfying when you get a recommendation from someone you've built for, and they came back for the second house, and sometimes come back for the third house. And I know one vineyard or vineyards we built for in Bacolb, and we built 9 houses for that family. So that's good. That's a good recommendation.
I think as far as the industry was concerned, the confidence was there. I don't think there was any problem. You know, you had some very successful building firms, the Stronachs as well as the Davises and the Comptons and the Parrys and Orits, Blacks, Pinfolds, and Wild Pinfold. Mm-hmm. He built the what is now the Old State Bank, Rural Bank. They built that one. To me, it was very much a family. They keenly bid against each other, and but you know, there was no sort of animosity evident anywhere. You know, they all knew each other. They were all friends with each other.
I think when you're in an association, you've got a little bit more chance of standing up to the unions and because they can pick you off one at a time. And that was one of the reasons, plus all the knowledge that they've got, a background in all sorts of history and knowledge, and yeah, somewhere you could get together and talk to other builders also. With most builders, if you had a problem somewhere, you can most probably ring up another builder and say, look, I've got a bit of a problem here. Can you help me out, either with a bit of knowledge or so on? I know we've lent fellows backhoes and so on, and occasionally you know, assisted other builders the same here, and I think that's healthy for the industry, really.
All I can say about the NMBA, it's been a wonderful group to be in, an asset, to give you a decent name in the city, as well as a good group of fellows to be around.
Oh yeah, it's been a great experience. Only a couple of things I've ever done in my life, and that was national service and president of the Master Builders, and apart from the sailing experiences. But I don't think I need to express any more than that. I think I've had a happy life.
I haven't got a lot of claims to fame, but one thing that I have, I was heavily involved in was in 1999, I'm sorry it was. We established the apprenticeship scheme at the Master Builders Newcastle, and we have some 160 on average apprentices that we keep on our books, and it's one of the things that that this association since that time is very proud of. In 1964, I think, yes, 1964, Brian was also the foundation president of the Master Builders Newcastle Social Golf Club, and he remained as the president of the Social Golf Club for another 30 years from that date, along with Reg Parker. They both worked tirelessly to try and get the building degree course established at Newcastle University, and over a period of 10 years of knocking on their door and trying to, with their assistance mind you, the course was finally started in 1991. It was a great achievement for the industry, because training is one of the things that we need to keep active and bring our young people through, and have them educated to the standards that the higher the better.
One of the highlights, one of the things I'm very proud of, is the fact that my son has followed me into the presidency of the association. There's only two families in Newcastle as family businesses that have had a father and son situation in the presidency of the association. Wayne finished his term last year in September 2012, and I'm very proud of that. A couple of the innovations that I thought of when I was president was, one was the actual the president's badge, which is handed down at each changeover, and the past president's badge. The other thing was that we have a past president's luncheon every 12 months. So I instigated that in my term, and that gives all the past presidents the opportunity to get together once a year, and the incumbent president can get up and tell the past presidents exactly what's going on in the association. During the time as president and prior to that, the Master Builder movement had a social golf club which was called the Master Builders Golf Club, and I was actively involved with that, and Reg Parker, who was the past president, he was also the captain of the Master Builders Golf Club. I followed on that. I've been a member of the golf club now for 40 years, and I served as president for 13 years, and now I enjoy life membership in that organisation. It's still going very strong, and it is an important arm of the social side of the Master Builder movement. So it's important to us.
And of course, the Hornibrook Golf, you may have heard of that, M.A. Hornibrook. We went to that. I went about 38 times in a row, and you meet up with all the guys that you know from the other states, and that is important.
Having joined the Master Builders and been elected as the deputy, Ron Black died during that time, and we didn't know what we were going to do with the James World Cup bowls. We had a good, successful golf club going, still going very strong, and we had a meeting at the NMBA, and the auditors came in, and not the auditors, the trustees came in, and wanted to know how we're going to do it. Well, I didn't know myself, but we were supposed to have it. I think it was that year or the next year, and so we had to make preparations. So I said, well, and I had a trusty lot of good blokes that was with us in those days. lot from the NMBA, all the old members we had from Lowlands, very good friends, and they backed me to the hilt. We didn't have any money, of course, but I just said, well, I'll get the sponsors, I'll organise it all, and we'll run a successful tournament. So they gave us the trustees said, thank you, we've heard enough, and they left. So then we sorted out what we were going to do. Then we went through pretty successfully. And when Ron was alive, we used to have a lot of our Christmas shows at local restaurants around Newcastle. We didn't have a lot, but we used to go around to restaurants, probably only about 15 of us. So I decided to have it in the auditorium at the Master Builders. I must say they were very successful.
Well, it's been very handy in the way of when you had industrial problems and things like that with the unions, which I always do, always try and fight with them. They've always backed us and joined in and enjoyed being part of it. They've been good. I think they've improved over the last few years, and what they're doing, they're getting better at it.
I think the NMBA, I've always been interested in it. I think it did a great job bringing the members together to share their common concerns, find ways through various industry problems, particularly in respect to industrial relations.
Well, I guess for me, getting involved with NMBA was a learning curve. You learned lots of things. They kept you up to date with just about anything and everything. If you got in a spot of trouble, you could talk to somebody, get some legal advice. Kept you up to date with contracts and subcontracts and all the paperwork, and it was good in that way. So you could be on top of your game to assist you in running your business. Where if you're out there and you know nothing, you're stumbling along. So I found it good in that way, and made lots of friends as well. Yeah.
I was getting support and just up-to-date information all the time, and meeting people that were in the same industry as me, and that was good, because when you're running a company on your own, you're sort of a bit of a loner. You need to talk to other people who are in the same industry. So yeah, that was one, and yeah, I made a lot of friends. The Master Builders Association, been there for a long time, and we got a lot of history in the type of people that have been members, and so yeah, I think it's really a strong industry, strong association.